Here is the transcript rewritten into a professional script with a hook, rehooks, and integrated insecurities, following all your instructions. Nobody bet against Viktor Koff. Not his training partners, not his rivals, not the promoters who paid him to break things. For 23 years, across 14 countries and hundreds of thousands of spectators, not one person had ever made Viktor Koff move against his will. He had been shoved by NFL linemen, pulled by draft horses, and struck by heavyweight boxers. Nothing worked. Nothing moved him. He was 500 pounds of Ukrainian granite anchored to the ground. And he had a standing offer, $10,000 to any man alive who could knock him off his feet. That challenge had been open for 6 years. No one had ever succeeded. The man who was about to collect that money weighed just 135 pounds. He was sitting in the third row of a rented banquet hall in San Francisco, wearing a black cotton kung fu suit and no shoes. He hadn't been invited to compete. He wasn't on the program. Most of the 340 people in the audience had no idea who he was. But within the next 3 seconds, Viktor Koff would reach into his jacket, pull out a leather checkbook, and write a check for $10,000 to a man less than a third of his weight. His hands would be shaking when he signed it. This is the story of what happened on the evening of October 11th, 1970, a night that 340 people watched and 339 couldn't explain. San Francisco, California, the Pacific Martial Arts Expo. Sunday evening, 7:15 p.m., the main hall of the Miyako Hotel in Japantown. A large banquet room had been converted into a demonstration floor, with folding chairs surrounding a raised wooden platform 20 feet by 20 feet. The platform was reinforced, because it had to be. The headliner weighed 1/4 of a ton. The expo was in its 2nd year. It wasn't the biggest event on the West Coast, but it drew serious practitioners, martial artists, strength athletes, wrestling coaches, and judo instructors. The crowd was mostly men over 30, hard hands and thick necks. These were people who understood force, who had spent years generating it, absorbing it, and redirecting it. 340 of them filled the hall. The air smelled of floor wax, cigarette smoke, and the faint sweetness of chrysanthemum tea from the hotel restaurant next door. 8 demonstrations were scheduled: breaking techniques, a judo throwing clinic, a kendo exhibition with live blades, but everyone was there for the main event, the immovable man. Viktor the Mountain Koff, born in 1932 in Zaporizhia, Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. Raised on a collective farm, by age 12, he could carry a 200-pound feed sack across a muddy field without stopping. By 16, he was wrestling grown men at regional Soviet competitions and winning. By 20, he was the strongest man in his province. By 25, he was the strongest man most people had ever seen. Viktor wasn't just strong, he was obsessed with strength. As a boy, he watched his father control 1,800-pound draft horses with nothing but positioning and grip. He learned early that weight was power, that mass was authority, that the biggest thing in the room always wins. He carried that belief like a second spine. It shaped everything he became. He defected to the West in 1959, crossing into Austria during an international weightlifting competition. He left behind everything, his family, his country, his language, and made his way to Chicago with nothing but a duffel bag and hands that could bend steel rebar. He found work in the steel mills on the South Side and started competing in American strongman circuits within 6 months. He won everything. His numbers were staggering: deadlift 885 pounds, squat 790, bench press 535. At his peak, he could flip a Volkswagen Beetle by himself. He did it on live television in 1966. But Viktor's real gift wasn't just lifting, it was his immovability. His center of gravity sat so low, his base so wide, his body so dense that displacing him was like trying to push a fire hydrant through concrete. He discovered this by accident in a 1961 bar fight when 3 men tried to throw him out of a tavern. They couldn't move him an inch. Viktor just stood there, arms crossed, 500 pounds of bone and muscle rooted to the floor like a redwood stump. The bartender called the police. The police couldn't move him either. Word spread and challenges came. Viktor accepted them all: football players, wrestlers, boxers, judoka. He would plant himself, spread his feet shoulder-width apart, bend his knees slightly, and invite anyone to try. Push, pull, tackle, lift, whatever you want. $10,000 if you move me. No one moved him. By October 1970, his record was remarkable. 11 years undefeated, 94 consecutive challenges defeated. Not one had shifted him more than half an inch. His technique was simple physics, 500 pounds distributed across a wide base with a low center of gravity. Even an NFL linebacker generating 1,200 pounds of force at full sprint couldn't overcome the static friction of Victor's planted feet. Simple math. Unbeatable math. Victor was 38 years old now, 61 tall, but as wide as a doorframe. His neck had disappeared into his trapezius muscles years ago, and his forearms were the size of other men's thighs. He wore a red singlet stretched across his enormous chest, and when he walked, the reinforced platform trembled. He was also, by every account, an arrogant man. Not cruel, but supremely, absolutely, unshakably confident. He had earned it. He had developed a habit of commentating on his own challenges, narrating his opponent's futile attempts while they strained against him. He would smile, shake his head, and sometimes pat the challenger on the back like a child who had tried to lift something too heavy. Tonight was supposed to be routine, another exhibition, another demonstration of overwhelming physical superiority. Victor would plant himself, invite challengers, and remain exactly where he stood. He'd done it 94 times. Number 95 would be no different. At 8:40 p.m., after the kendo demonstration wrapped up, Victor took the stage. Under the banquet hall lights, he looked like something carved from a boulder, a monument to human mass. He addressed the crowd in his deep, accented English. "Good evening, I am Victor Koff. I weigh 500 pounds. No man has moved me in 11 years. His English was practiced, deliberate, delivered with the showmanship of someone who had given this speech dozens of times. "I offer $10,000 to any man here tonight who can move me from this spot. Push me, hit me, tackle me, use any technique you know. Karate, judo, wrestling, I don't care. You move me, you get the money." The room fell silent. "I have heard some people say that martial arts can overcome size," he said, scanning the audience. "I have heard that Chinese kung fu can defeat a bigger opponent. This is a fantasy, a movie trick. I see these little men on television kicking. Spinning, it looks impressive, but it is not real. Real force requires real mass. A 130-pound man cannot generate enough force to move 500 pounds. This is not opinion. This is physics. This is gravity. This is truth. I mean no disrespect to the Chinese arts, but I challenge any kung fu man here tonight, any Wing Chun master, any Tai Chi practitioner, to come up here and show me your ancient secrets. Move me 1 inch, and I will give you $10,000 and a public apology. But you won't, because you can't, because nature says so." In the third row, a compact Chinese man in a black kung fu suit shifted in his seat. The man sitting next to him, a Filipino martial artist named Larry Hartzell, one of Bruce Lee's senior students, leaned over and whispered, "Don't. He's enormous. You could get hurt." The small man didn't respond immediately. He was studying Victor, watching how he planted his feet, distributed his weight, and breathed. He wasn't angry or offended. He was calculating. Victor continued, "So who wants to try? Who wants $10,000? Two challengers came up. The first was a judo black belt, maybe 210 pounds. He gripped Victor's singlet, dropped his hips, and executed a perfect body drop throw. Victor didn't move, not even slightly. The judoka strained, adjusted, and tried again. Nothing. Victor patted him on the shoulder. "Good technique, not enough." The second challenger was bigger, a college wrestler, 245 pounds, thick through the chest and legs. He shot for Victor's hips, driving with everything he had, legs churning against the wooden platform. Victor absorbed it like a wall absorbs rain. The wrestler's feet slipped and he fell to his knees. Victor helped him up, strong, very strong, but not strong enough. The audience applauded. The demonstration seemed over. Victor had proven his point again. Mass wins, physics wins, strength wins. He was about to step down when a quiet voice cut through the applause. "I'd like to try." The voice came from the third row, calm, almost polite, not loud, but clear in the sudden silence. Victor squinted into the audience. "You want a challenge?" "I do." The small man stood. He was 57.5, maybe 135 pounds. He walked toward the stage. The audience shifted. Murmurs rippled through the folding chairs. This wasn't a wrestler or a judoka. This was a small man in street clothes who looked like he'd wandered in from a restaurant. Larry Hartzell put his face in his hands. He knew what was about to happen. So did the 6 other people in the audience who recognized the man walking toward the stage. James Yim Lee, Bruce's training partner, was sitting in the back row, grinning. Victor watched the small man climb the 3 steps to the platform. The platform barely registered his weight. It had grown when Victor stepped on, but stayed silent under Bruce. The size difference was almost comical. Victor's single thigh was wider than the challenger's entire torso. One of Victor's hands could wrap around both of the man's wrists with room to spare. The weight difference was 365 pounds, the gap between a house cat and a grizzly bear. Several people actually laughed, nervously, the way you laugh when you see something that can only end badly. "What is your name?" Victor asked. He had never heard the name Bruce Lee. He didn't watch American television or follow martial arts. He saw a small Chinese man who weighed less than his left leg. "What style do you practice?" "I don't practice a style," Bruce replied. "I practice what works." Victor almost laughed but caught himself. "You understand the challenge. You must move me from this spot." "I understand. You weigh maybe 130 pounds, 365 pounds difference. You understand this is not possible?" "Yes." Victor offered him a way out. "I offer you the chance to walk away. No shame. Some things cannot be overcome." Bruce replied calmly, "Everything can be overcome. The question is how." Victor shrugged, spread his feet, bent his knees, and planted himself. He'd done this 96 times, including tonight's challengers. His base was wide, his center of gravity low, a pyramid of human flesh. Unmovable, undeniable. "The rules?" Bruce asked. "No rules move me, any method." The expo organizer, a Japanese-American named Robert Koga, stepped forward. "For safety, please, no strikes to the throat or eyes. Everything else is permitted. Mr. Lee, are you ready?" Bruce nodded. He didn't take a stance or drop into any recognizable fighting position. He stood naturally, weight centered, hands at his sides, relaxed, breathing slowly. 340 people were watching now. Every conversation stopped, every teacup on the table. The room held its breath. Victor waited, expecting what he always got, a rush, a push, a grab and pull, but Bruce didn't rush. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. The two men faced each other, 500 pounds and 135. The platform creaked under Victor's weight. It made no sound under Bruce's. Victor shifted impatiently. He was used to the charge, the bull rush, the desperate lunge. This waiting made him uncomfortable. He was a mountain. Mountains don't wait, they get struck. "Come on," Victor said. "I won't break." Bruce didn't respond. For 2 more seconds he remained motionless, studying Victor's feet, weight distribution, knee angles, calf tension, and the slight forward lean of his torso. He was reading the architecture of the mountain, the way an engineer reads a blueprint, looking for the load-bearing floor. The audience was confused. Some thought Bruce was frozen, afraid. Larry Hartzell knew better. Bruce was not hesitating. He was computing every angle, every vector, every fraction of an inch. Then Bruce moved. He didn't charge forward. He stepped to Victor's right side with a quick lateral shuffle, 3 feet in 1 second. Victor's eyes tracked him, and his body started to rotate to face the movement. For half a second, his weight shifted from evenly distributed to favoring his left leg. That half second was enough. Bruce's right hand shot forward, not a punch, but an open palm strike, an inch punch with force concentrated at the point of contact. The heel of Bruce's palm connected with Victor's right shoulder. The contact area was small, maybe 3 square inches, but the force wasn't generated by Bruce's arm. It came from his rear foot, traveled through his hip rotation, accelerated through his waist, channeled through his shoulder, and delivered through his palm. The entire kinetic chain fired in sequence. 135 pounds of perfectly coordinated force focused on a single point, delivered at the exact moment when Victor's weight distribution was compromised. The physics changed. Victor didn't fly backward, he didn't fall. What happened was more shocking. His right foot slid 3 inches, then his left foot followed 2 inches. His body rotated slightly, his hips turning 15 degrees to the right. He moved. Victor Koff moved. For a moment, no one breathed. Victor stood there. 3 inches from where he started, staring at his own feet like they belonged to someone else. His face cycled through emotions, shock, disbelief, confusion, and then slowly, something unexpected, a small, reluctant smile. The smile of a man who had just discovered that the world was bigger than he thought. The platform creaked as Victor reset and planted again. He stared at Bruce. The showman's confidence was gone, replaced by something he hadn't felt in 11 years. Genuine, disorienting confusion. The audience didn't react immediately, they were processing. The 245-pound wrestler with legs like tree trunks couldn't shift Victor a hair, but this 135-pound man had made him slide 3 inches. Then the sound came, not applause, but a collective gasp. 340 people inhaling at once, the sound of certainty breaking. How Victor said the word coming out in Russian before he caught himself. How did you do that? Bruce stood calmly, hands back at his sides. He wasn't breathing hard or sweating. The strike had taken less than 1 second, the setup had taken 4. You're strong, Bruce said. The strongest man I've ever touched, but strength isn't structure. You planted your feet to resist forward force, linear force. A straight push. No one pushes you straight back because you're right. The physics won't allow it. Victor was listening, really listening. For the first time in 11 years, someone was explaining something about his own body that he didn't know. But you have a gap, Bruce continued. When you track lateral movement, your weight shifts for half a second, maybe less. Your base narrows, your center of gravity rises slightly, but slightly is enough if the force is applied correctly, at the right angle, at the right moment. Victor looked down at his feet, at the marks on the wooden platform where his shoes had dragged. 3 inches, 11 years, 94 challenges, and this man had found the gap in half a second. The check, Victor said quietly. Bruce shook his head. I didn't come here for the money. Victor reached into a bag by the edge of the platform, pulled out a leather checkbook, the same checkbook he'd carried to every exhibition for 6 years, never once opened. He wrote the check, his hands trembling slightly. He tore it out and held it toward Bruce. A bet is a bet. You earned it. Bruce took the check, folded it, and put it in his pocket. He wouldn't cash it for 3 weeks. When he did, he'd donate the entire amount to the Oakland Chinese Community Center. Victor stepped closer, towering over Bruce. His shadow covered the smaller man entirely, but there was no aggression or resentment, there was wonder. You said strength isn't structure. What did you mean? Bruce looked up at him. Your body is incredible, 500 pounds, immovable. But you're immovable because of how you stand, not because of how much you weigh. If someone understands structure, how force travels, where the weak points are, when the balance shifts, weight becomes less important, much less important. Can this be learned? Victor asked. Everything can be learned. The question is whether you're willing to unlearn first. Victor was quiet for a long time. 340 people were watching 2 men have a conversation that most of them couldn't hear. The ones close enough would remember it for the rest of their lives. I have spent 23 years building strength, Victor said. You are telling me strength is not enough. I'm telling you strength is a tool, a powerful tool, but a tool without understanding is just weight. A hammer doesn't know where to strike. A man who does doesn't need a hammer. Victor extended his hand. Bruce took it. Victor's hand engulfed Bruce's completely. Their handshake lasted 5 seconds. In that moment, something passed between them. Respect, not the polite respect of sportsmanship, but the deep, earned respect of one master recognizing another. The audience erupted, not with polite applause, but with thunderous, bewildered, joyful noise. They had watched something that shouldn't be possible. 135 pounds moved 500. Technique defeated mass. Understanding defeated strength. Everything they thought they knew about force had been challenged in 3 seconds. Mr. Koga took the microphone. I think we've all witnessed something remarkable tonight. Mr. Lee, would you be willing to explain what we just saw? Bruce nodded. For the next 20 minutes, Bruce Lee gave the 340 people in that banquet hall an education they never expected. He explained the inch punch, demonstrated the mechanics of force generation, and showed how the kinetic chain works, from foot to fist, from ground to target. He explained centerline theory, economy of motion, and why a 135-pound man can generate more focused force than a 500-pound man if he understands the delivery system. He brought Victor into the demonstration, showed him where his gaps were and how to close them. Victor, the man who hadn't been taught anything about his own body in over a decade, listened like a first-year student. He nodded, asked questions, and tried what Bruce showed him. The audience watched the 500-pound strongman take instruction from the 135-pound martial artist with the attentiveness of a child learning to write his name. The arrogance was gone. In its place was curiosity, pure, hungry curiosity. At the end, Bruce addressed the audience. I did not come here tonight to embarrass this man. Victor Koff is the strongest human being I have ever stood next to. His discipline is extraordinary. His dedication is extraordinary, but strength without knowledge is incomplete. Mass without understanding is just weight. A river does not defeat a boulder by being harder than the boulder. It defeats the boulder by finding the path around it, through it, under it. The greatest fighter is not the one who is biggest, not the one who is fastest, not even the one who is strongest. The greatest fighter is the one who understands. Understanding has no weight class. Understanding has no size limit. Understanding is water, and water always finds the way. Victor approached Bruce in the parking lot after the event. The October air was cool, with fog rolling in from the bay and hotel lights casting long shadows across the concrete. "Mr. Lee, I must ask, how long did you study me before you struck?" 4 seconds, Bruce said. Victor shook his head. "I spent 11 years perfecting my technique. You defeated it in 4 seconds. I didn't defeat your technique. I understood it. That's different. Will you teach me?" Bruce replied, "I can show you some things. But Victor, what I showed you tonight works both ways. Understanding goes both ways. You understand strength better than anyone I've met. I'd like to learn from you too." Victor stared. In 23 years, no one had asked to learn from him. People challenged him, paid to watch him, bet against him, but no one asked to learn. They exchanged phone numbers. Over the next 2 years, they met 4 times. Bruce visited Victor's small gym in Chicago twice, and Victor came to Los Angeles twice. Bruce taught Victor about force angles, reading opponents, and the gaps in structure. Victor taught Bruce about raw strength development, how the body adapts to extreme loads, and the mental discipline of carrying 500 pounds through a life built for lighter men. Victor the Mountain retired from exhibition challenges in 1972. His record stood at 96 challenges undefeated, with 1 conceded loss. He never called it a loss. He called it an education. He kept the torn check stub from October 11, 1970, in a frame on his gym wall, next to a photograph of him and Bruce standing side by side in the hotel parking lot, the mountain and the water. The biggest man Bruce Lee ever faced, and the smallest man who ever moved him. He told every student the same thing: size matters until it doesn't, strength matters until understanding walks into the room, and never, ever underestimate a man because he is smaller than you. Because one night in San Francisco, the smallest man in the room moved the biggest, and it took him 3 seconds.